Okay, I believe we're on YouTube now. So is everyone ready to start?
Yes.
Excellent.
All set. Good luck.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. This is Tahir Mahmood from Dubai. I'm the WBAF Senator for United Arab Emirates, and I'd like to thank you all for joining us today for this webinar, where we'll be discussing the coronavirus pandemic and the new world. Ramadan Mubarak to those that are observing the holy month of Ramadan. I just ended my fast, so with a lot of food, I hope I can keep my eyes open. Panelists, I'll need your help for that.
Okay.
So look, we know everyone is anxious about COVID-19 and how it has already affected us. But more importantly, how it is going to affect our lives and our businesses going forward. The decision-making process has become complicated in every aspect of our lives. Regardless of what we think the future will bring, we need to revise our short-term and long-term plans. Startups are included in this picture, where they need to revise their roadmap and their financial projections. We all know the flexibility and the ability to adapt to new situations, even very challenging ones, will determine the winners. Today, we'll discuss some of the challenges entrepreneurs and investors are facing and the changes we have had to make and will expect to make going forward. I'm joined by 4 speakers who bring a depth of knowledge and experience when it comes to startups. We have with us fellow senators of WBAF, Viviana Angula from Bolivia, Dr. Tina Alton from the United Kingdom, Salt Katona from Hungary, and Roger Clintus from Philippines. Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Hello, everyone.
So look, I want to start with each panelist providing a brief introduction of themselves and tell us how the coronavirus situation is in your country. It's always best to hear from people on the ground. Let me start with Viviana, all the way in Bolivia in South America. Viviana, you're currently working for a Canadian corporate finance company dedicated to startups and education on venture capital in the region. Please tell us more about yourself and the situation in Bolivia.
Yes, thank you so much. Very humbled to be part of this panel. And thank you, Viveris, for including Bolivia in the WBAF. And definitely, I've been working for the past 15 years in diverse programs focusing on entrepreneurship and investment from Puerto Rico, Peru, and through Valhalla. We visited about 23 countries so far. Bringing education and investment readiness and entrepreneurship development. And I helped create the first angel group in Peru. And 2 years ago, moved to my country, to my home country, Bolivia, to start the first accelerator program backed by the corporate sector, which was a personal project, and it's now my passion. We were able to work with 23 startups from diverse industries. And now we are working with a second cohort. So I think my life went into a very nice cycle to bring me back to my country after 15 years living abroad. And you were asking how Bolivia is facing the pandemic. Well, Bolivia now borders around 900 positive cases with around 50 deaths so far. We are 38 days into the quarantine, and it seems it will keep on most of May. We are scared. I'm going to say that because we have a very weak medical system, very, very weak. I think we have so far 600 and some ventilators, if I'm not mistaken, for the whole country, almost 13 million people. Mixed with poverty and political fragility can turn this pandemic into a multi-layer critical problem. And I think that is why the President Janine Áñez, who was recently elected in October, declared very early on a national emergency and implemented various economic measures to alleviate the effects on the coronavirus on the most vulnerable families in the country and the corporate sector as well.
Okay, thank you very much for that. And you're right, having a weak healthcare system is one of the biggest dangers when it comes to a pandemic like the coronavirus, and we wish you all the best over in Bolivia. Next is fellow Brit, Dr. Tina, Vice President of WBAF's Global Women Leaders Committee. Tina, are you making use of your 1 hour of exercise time every day?
No. I'm not, sadly. All my children are at home. So of course, homeschooling, which I'm terrible at the moment. So by the time the, me time arrives, it really is not going out exercising. But we've been quite lucky with the weather. It's been beautiful weather. So you're able to actually be outside, enjoy the garden, and thinking of getting a trampoline to get some exercise in. But at the moment, no, not utilizing that 1 hour grace period provided. Right, so just looking at what's going on in the UK. Of course, I think within Europe, although we're not part of Europe, we didn't really go into lockdown earlier, like, France and Italy and co. And we've been in lockdown about 4 weeks. Well, I've been in 7 weeks now because I have a daughter who's diabetic, so we had to shield her. So, we closed much earlier, if you will. So we know that we have another 2 weeks extension of being in, and as part of preparation, of course, really there hasn't been any government that had been prepared for this pandemic. So we had to turn one of our it's called the Excel Center into a makeshift hospital with about, I think it was about 4,000 something beds. And then of course the National Health Service, goes into overdrive. So all operations, most cancer, operations, all of those things had to be halted so that big focus could go into dealing with the pandemic. And of course we had our own local brands, Dyson and all of those, manufacturing ventilators, literally every single, including even an 8-year-old who's actually using their 3D printer to, create visors. And, we had to learn how to make a mask and all those things. So I think although it sort of came, it just came, without any forewarning, most governments and all stakeholders have pulled together to try and deal with the situation. Our own Prime Minister, as you know, tested positive and had to be admitted to intensive care. And today is actually the first day that he is now back to work. So, last 2 weeks is like, oh my gosh, just really, really tense as a whole nation. Just, hoping and praying that our Prime Minister will pull through, and just thank God that he has, and he's now back to office. So we're looking, I think normally they do press, government briefings for the whole nation every day at 5 p.m. So of course I'm here with you. So after I'm done, I'll find out, what new information the government is giving us. But so far it's been, it was scary at the moment, but I think, we all recognize the dangers, virus it is. People have lost close ones, loved ones. And so it's no longer a thing. It's like, we all have to work together as a community, as a society, as a nation, if we're going to win this. So far, so good.
And I think UK is one of the places where, critics are saying they acted a bit late, which is why it's probably made the situation a lot worse than it should have been. So, hopefully it won't get any worse than it is, and things do start getting better. So
we hope so as well. And I think, to that, it actually goes to really speak to the fact that even our Prime Minister had not been adequately protected from that point of view. He tested positive. I think the director for one of the medical directors who was part of the briefings, some of the high, profile government officials who were giving the daily briefings all tested positive. But unfortunately, our Prime Minister was the one who, got really seriously taken by it. So it's always a challenge, to know, did we react fast, soon enough? Did we not? You can't ever get it right. And it's something that there's no track record for any government, for any generation, anywhere to fall back on. So I think, yes, maybe there's really no right or wrong way of responding to the corona, but I think we all as stakeholders have to pull together in solidarity to then face what we're facing at that point. So yeah.
Definitely. Thank you, Tina. And Tina, could you just give a brief background of yourself? Because I know you're very active when it comes to being an entrepreneur, being an investor, advising, supporting women entrepreneurs. So just a brief about yourself, please.
Yes, so I'm Tina Rolton. I live in London, and I have many places to travel to. So Corona has to hurry up and go. I have 7 children, and I've been an entrepreneur for 2 decades now. Run my own businesses together with my husband. Also founded a women's movement called Nations of Women, really enabling women, or in the past. Previously, we used to say empowerment, and it still is, the word, but I prefer the word enabling. So enabling women and connecting them strategically to then spearhead systemic change in the nations, because we all know as entrepreneurs, investors, that when there are issues in the nations or in the community, women tend to recognize that, okay, there is a problem here, there is something here. And there's also research to back it that they are most likely would be the first to try and create solutions to issues cross-border. So we like to enable women from capacity acceleration scale, and then connecting them strategically to then be able to spearhead those systemic change. So that's what we do in Nations of Women. And of course, I'm the Senator for UK with WBAF, and also the Vice President with the Women's Committee, and the self-appointed Moderator for Happiness in the family of WBAF.
Fantastic. Thank you for that. Let me move on to Zsolt Katona, who joins us from Hungary. Zsolt has some excellent experience when it comes to venture capital, which I look forward to hearing about. Zsolt, please tell us about yourself and how things are in Hungary.
Yes, hi everyone. My name is Zsolt Katona. Greetings from sunny Budapest, Hungary. A little bit about my background. I am a corporate and investment banker as a starter. 25 years ago, actually, I started with a Dutch British bank called ING Barings. Following that, I had the privilege to be the CEO of the Budapest Stock Exchange for 4 years. So I run the top capital institution on the Hungarian capital market. It was truly a great time. And following that, as you rightly said, Tahir, I moved to venture capital investments first, on very interestingly on the state side, on the government side, by the Hungarian Development Bank. We set up a government-owned venture capital firm called High Ventures. And then I moved to, on the private side, where I am currently, called Solus Capital. We have 2 dedicated funds. They are hybrid funds, so containing private money as well as money from EU structural funds, concentrating on intelligent technologies and digitalization. Started investing in 2018. So far, we invested around 15 startups. And we will hopefully invest in another 50 or so 50. So that's about myself. As for Hungary, the situation is the following. We are right now in the 45th day of the lockdown. So we started relatively early because we were bordered by Austria. At that time, the virus came from the Austrian ski resorts, so we moved relatively early. I think the government handles the situation very well. Hospitals are prepared for the masses of people. Actually, the strategy is to flatten out the curve, so to prolong the cases in time, so the hospitals can cope with the patients. So far, around 10,000 people were quarantined. So that's around 0.1% of the population. we have a population of 10 million people. So 10,000 quarantined and 280 people died, approximately 500 recovered. So I think we are relatively well coping with the corona. I think in a couple of weeks' time, maybe mid-May, the government will make the first easing steps. So they might release the lockdown a little bit. But so far, I think we are doing well. The mood of the people is relatively good, and the summer is coming, so I think everybody is trying to be more optimistic.
Good,
Thank you.
Excellent. Yeah, and I think it's you know, a similar situation here in UAE, where you know, in Dubai itself, we had a lockdown up until Friday. Government saw that the numbers are stable. You know, there's not a big increase in number of cases, and I think UAE has been one of the countries that has done the highest number of testing when you look at the population that we have in UAE. So here in Dubai, the lockdown has been eased off, so there's a lot more movement happening. I think Hungary is looking at doing the same thing, where get yourself into a position where things are stabling out and slowly start opening up. So I hope you get there very quickly. Thank you for that, Zolf. And then our fourth panelist is Roger Clintus. I met Roger for the first time in Dubai airport last year when we were heading to Istanbul for the WBAF annual summit. Roger is an edutech entrepreneur and an angel investor with a best-selling motivational book called Beyond Survival. Although Roger represents Philippines, he and his partner Rina spend their time between a few countries. Roger, where are you today? Is it Philippines or is it elsewhere?
Okay, right now we're in Singapore, but as you mentioned, we straddle 3 countries. We're really truly ASEAN, Malaysia, and then Philippines and Singapore. Since you asked about the situation, we're monitoring 3 countries, and it's interesting the way they approach this pandemic. One of the countries started the earliest. I think this should be a puzzle for you, but it ended up with the highest death rate. So it doesn't mean that when you start early, you're gonna end up with, you know, more success. The other one started about 1 week after this country, but it has the highest recovery rate, 67%. So it's quite amazing. So it's a kudos to their medical system. And there's one with the best medical system, but twice the number of cases, you know, reported. So each one is handling its own way. I couldn't say one is right and one is better than the other, but it's very interesting that at the end of the day, it's really the people that counts. To me, the success of any is really, aside from the political will, it's really the ability of the people to rally around that problem. You may have the worst medical system, but if your people gather around it and really do stay at home diligently, and they don't complain, they just go about, they know that stay home means save lives, that's it. So I think Asia is quite lucky in that sense, because when government says, you know, we call it mobility control order, we know what that means.
Yeah.
When the government is a circuit breaker, that means, you know, don't do it, you know. We're under real code red. When people say community quarantine, it means, you know, get together with your family, you quarantine yourself, build your own community. So each to his own. Very interesting how the people took to it. So that's what I can say about your first question, Tahir.
Good.
And
Thank you.
about my background, just quickly, I'm a founder of EduTech with my partner, Rina. We're also in AI Ventures. We're quite lucky that the investments we put in have some technology in it, which later on I'll talk about, which is actually what is very important. We pioneer in neuroscience education, digital transformation, smart cities, humanoid robotics, Internet of Things, gourmet food business, and esports. So it's quite diverse, but all of these have some technology element inside it. And we're proud to say that we have quite a balanced portfolio. That's all I can say for now.
Very good. Excellent. And look forward to hearing more about some of your companies that are in your portfolio. So we know how the virus has affected each of you in your country. I'd like to now share with us, I'd like you to now share with us an overview of the startup ecosystem in your respective countries. But more importantly, if your government has put anything in place to help startups. We've been hearing about government stimulus packages for businesses, but is this funding actually helping the startups and the smaller businesses, or is it being channeled towards the larger businesses to support them? Tino, I know the UK government has put in place a number of stimulus packages. Can you tell us more about the startup ecosystem and how the government is supporting small businesses?
Yes. So, I mean, the government, like the normal, if we're just looking at the startup ecosystem, our government has pledged a $1.2 billion stimulus package, of which is split into two parts: 500 million for high impact, startups, but working with VCs. So high impact startups backed by VCs can access up to 500 million pounds. And then there is, for the smaller size, startups, there's also 750 million pounds made up of grants and loans that they can access in order to, keep going. Of course, now this coronavirus has made us realize that actually, we really need to support our startups, particularly those in the tech and life sciences space. So the 750 million grants and loans would ultimately convert to a stake in the business. But how they've structured it is like there's a 20% discount on the next funding round for that startup. However, that would be dropped if they have repaid back the loan or the grant. Well, if it's a grant, you wouldn't pay back. But if it's a loan, then within 3 years, then there would be no stake in the business. So from that perspective, I think there is a stimulus package for established businesses, companies, corporations to support them, but then the startups as well. Again, if you're those with VCs, I like how they're doing it. So it's not just, you're a high impact startup, so we're just going to throw money at you, but it's actually collaborating with VCs and other funds to then be able to disseminate to those that are actually viable startups that really needs that support. So far, that's what's happening in the UK. So there's that 1.25 billion pounds, package for just the startup to ensure that they continue, going rather than everything grinding to a halt. And I really think that's the other thing is no government can ever get it right? You can never get it right. And how much spending is good spending, because you could end up spend, and then we know what happens when any economy overspends is that it's asking for trouble. So it's a really, really fine balance between being able to sustain startups, being able to sustain the normal, SMEs, and then the corporations. Everybody needs help. So I think that, again, startups that are being held accountable, maybe through an accelerator or an incubator, would have the right systems in place to help them be able to access these grants or these loans in order to continue. But definitely, if you're in the tech space, health space, and life sciences, then they're prioritizing them.
Very good. Okay, and it's a good way because they're doing it in conjunction with VCs and funds. So essentially, from government's perspective, these non-VCs are doing their due diligence, so it's easier for the government to pick out those companies that it can support. Excellent.
Yes.
Very good. Thank you for that,
Yes.
Tina. Roger, if we look at the Philippines, although they've had just under 8,000 official recorded cases, which you would think is not too bad considering the UK has half of that on a daily basis, businesses have still been affected. Tell us about the ecosystem there for startups and how the government is helping, if they are at all.
In the case of the Philippines, it's what I call a double whammy. Because first, on the macro level, the country's GDP was growing at 6 to 7% before COVID, and one of the stars in the ASEAN, in fact. And it's now predicted to be about 3% post-COVID. So this is bad news. Bad news. Okay, so money, liquidity, and so on, funding will be very dearth. Number two, on a micro level, last year, April 26, 2019, the government created, for the first time after so many years that we've been lobbying for it, the Philippines Startup Development Fund with $400 million funding, which was the great salvation that we were looking for. Obviously, because of the current reality, it is technically dead. So the funding is, I doubt whether the funding will come, given the priority that the government faces. So for us as startup, we just have to accept that this is double crisis. So the rule of the game now is all bets are off. No one's gonna come to bail you out. You're pretty much on your own. Good luck and see you at the finish line. So I see that as both a challenge but an opportunity, because I work with real entrepreneurs at the low level. And later on, I can talk to you about how opportunities, small ones, developing countries, show you the power of the entrepreneurial mindset. Because despite the lack of resources and the funding that was halted, there are so many new startups coming up, addressing what I call hyper-local needs.
Okay. And I guess not just in Philippines, around the world, it's a matter of survival of the fittest now. Those that are in good shape and can survive will get through this pandemic and hopefully flourish post coronavirus pandemic. So we'll have to wait and see how that pans out. Thank you for that, Roger. Joel, you've spent over 17 years with ING Bank and its securities arm. You've been the CEO of Budapest Stock Exchange. So you were probably spending most of your time dealing with the larger organizations. You then moved into the VC space and started interacting with the smaller companies in Hungary. How has your experience been, and how are startups supported in Hungary?
Fairly good, I must say. I think the financing ladder is almost complete. So giving support even at very early stage incubation phase ideas exists. And then followed by basically every other step: pre-seed, seed, and startups and growth phase and scale up. I think what is missing a little bit is the private equity side. So the larger deals between VC and the stock exchange listing. I think that's what is missing. But that's primarily due to the fact that the majority of the funding which hit the market were coming from the EU structure of funds, and they were dedicated for the very early stage micro and SMEs. But I think the ecosystem is doing well. It is coping even at this stage very well with the situation. There are funds which are building their strategies on each other. For example, what I mentioned to you, the state-owned High Ventures Fund, they are releasing every year tens of startups which reached a certain Series A level maybe, and then the other funds are ready to jump in. And the stock exchange itself is also making efforts to go down to the financing ladder. So they recently established an MTF, which is inviting those companies which are not yet ready for a full listing, but they want to be brave enough and try to enter the stock market type of reporting and regulations. So I think the ecosystem itself is self-containing and functioning well. Regarding the government measures in this situation, actually tomorrow there will be a big announcement by the Hungarian Development Bank about the details. But in a nutshell, what we know so far is that they will have approximately, I have to just convert it from Hungarian forints, approximately $5 billion for this purpose. So for the Hungarian enterprise system, it's not only for the SMEs, it's generally for middle-sized and even larger size corporates as well. Okay. It includes obviously loans and guarantees, but certain part of it, approximately $1.5 billion, will be capital equity type of programs. We will know the details tomorrow, but a certain part will definitely go to the startups, like a crisis management small fund in the value of around $100 million. So we are very much looking forward to this news tomorrow, and I will share with the WBAF community more details.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that. Viviana, if you can please share with us details of Bolivia's startup ecosystem and the government support. Whilst you do that, I'm going to see if I can share with the audience a link to your LinkedIn article, which talks about opportunities for entrepreneurs in Bolivia. So please, Viviana.
Thank you so much. Bolivia has a very, very nascent ecosystem. There is no venture capital. The first angel group started last year in one city. There are 3 accelerators now, and most of them are initiatives from an individual who actually, like in my case, I look for family office to support this project, and we're currently looking for international grants that can help us live in this non-for-profit model. There is not such a, there is our pipeline is not that big. We need higher education to be able to have a more sophisticated pipeline. The government, this new government, because remember we were 13 years under another government that wanted to stay in power unconstitutionally and that did not really focus on entrepreneurship development at all, and less into investment. So we are hopeful that the new government that will take power will have a better understanding and motivation of what's the value of developing an ecosystem. And the voices of our entrepreneurs will finally unite in one association and not be distributed in all different cities throughout the country. There are 2 laws right now, 2 proposals of laws, that one has a more digital heart to it and the other one is more generic, which has a lot more in-depth understanding of investment, that are on hold right now. They haven't even been reviewed yet. My suggestion to the government was to merge both of them, to analyze with international experts and how to make these laws applicable to Bolivian reality. I've been talking to private equity funds which do have large amounts of different funds that to see if they could actually get a proposal out during this time so they can assign a percentage of their of the already running funds to support the startups. This is a very early in the game conversation. If any of you have suggestions of other ideas that we might be creative enough to present, I would really appreciate that. So with all of that said, there is a couple of initiatives that the president has put forward that will in some ways support the or help the startups. One is the credit deferrals, although many of them don't have credit, some do. And basically the financial institutions across the country will automatically defer credit payments for 6 months after the national emergency. The other plan is the salary payment support plan. It is about giving soft and easy loans to companies to help them pay the wages of 2 months. Loans will be given on very affordable terms, and companies can request it throughout the country, and those loans can only be used to pay wages and salaries.
Very good. Excellent. Thank you very much for that. So look, change is something we've all had to deal with since the start of the pandemic. One common change for most of us is the restriction of movement and having to work from home. Moving from face-to-face meetings with clients to using applications such as Zoom, Microsoft Teams, or Skype to interact with everyone. It will be helpful to understand what some of the main changes you have had to make with regards to your role as an investor or an entrepreneur. Have you had to hold back on funding certain companies? Have you put additional funds into your portfolio companies to help them survive? Has the process for new investments changed for you? Joel, as a VC, if you can tell us about changes you've had to make or that you're considering, please.
Regarding the technical issues and working from home office, I don't think there is any major difference which we cannot bridge. So we are holding all the investment committee meetings, all the board meetings. We make decisions on a timely manner. Actually, it's even on a more intense and more regular basis than otherwise. So every week we make new investment decisions. As for new startups coming in with pitching, it's also we are doing that regularly. So we welcome new pitches. We actually give support to the existing startups in a way that we encourage them to talk with us. We don't have any technical problem. Obviously, we are using all these facilities, so it's working very, very well. But in general, I'm always telling our startup investments that please, guys, come to us, talk to us as early as possible. Don't wait until your runway ends. And we try to help them as much as possible. We ease the milestone conditions just to release some additional funds which can prolong their runways. So I think it's working very well. The situation for the other VCs are very similar in Hungary. And we are very much looking forward to these government initiatives, which can help on a very rapid basis some injections into troubled startups. Those companies which are actually in the fundraising stage, that's an interesting point. We have to have some applications which we were forced to turn down simply. So but the companies themselves understood, obviously. If somebody in the entertainment business or in the travel industry or transport logistics or whatever is looking for money at this present moment, they must understand that this is not the right time. Even if we are looking on a longer term, obviously we are not short-term investors, and we are looking for 5 or 7 years exit time. But still, they have to understand, and they do understand, luckily, that this is not the right time. On the contrary, there are some opportunistic investments which we are speeding up, because this is the right time where those companies who do not have personal interactions and they can service online and they can develop certain ideas at these present circumstances. they need funding right now, so then we speed it up. So there has been quite a bit of reshuffling in our pipeline, but so far we and also the companies are coping with it very well.
Good. So things haven't slowed down. That sounds very good. Roger, how about yourself? Have things slowed down for you? Roger, you're on mute.
There you go. Sorry. Thank you, Tahir. Interestingly, this pandemic has given us a lot of new learnings. We thought we would never have learned as a portfolio manager and angel investor and accelerator. One is most of our founders haven't really been through a crisis of this magnitude. I mean, us who are the investors, we've been through all financial, meltdown, tragedy and so on. So I realized that while they are agile, they're not yet what I call gritty. So what we did, which we thought Rina's idea was, we created a council of founders. So all the founders in our portfolio actually are part of a council that we create so that they experience what this means. So when it happens again, their DNA is in place. So just to give you an example, we told them that there are 6 things we should remember. So we came up with our own, principle, and let's see whether it works. First, we must protect our employees and retain our stars. This is not the time to let go of your people because you have to show them that in tough times, you're going to be there. Number 2, we plan our burn rate very quickly and they know exactly what we're talking about. Very transparent. This is how much runway we have. We have 3 months prepared. All investors are willing to put that. But you got to help me plan that. Number 3, we need to manage cash flows. So the third rule we have is whatever is the deal, close it. It doesn't matter how big, how short. This is not the time to say, wow, this is unfair. I said, we need cash flow, close it. And everybody is closing. It's amazing later on when I tell you. Number 3, we review and restructure our contracts. Our rent, we talk to our lawyer and say, how do we invoke the law and say, we're not bankrupt, but we cannot pay. So we're able to save a lot of fixed costs. Number 4, we agreed to work as a team, meaning the problem of one startup is the problem of all. And finally, we put in place a succession plan. So I asked every startup, so who's the second? What if something happens and we need to declare that someone will have to go to another company? Who's the next in line? It's amazing, but most startups don't have a succession plan. Everybody is in the right place and no one can move. So I gave them the idea that we are one family and that my AI developer is now working with my IoT. Our HR person is working with our marketing person and so on. So here's the conclusion. The last 2 months, we had 2 additional investments that we put into 2 companies. We got 1 million investment from a government body for one of our companies. Okay. And actually, we are able to create a new startup in the education business that I'm so excited. We are going to be the first virtual reality education system that's AI real. And it just gave birth during crisis because of the stakeholder that kept bugging us because we have a brick and mortar, preschool. And then everyone is saying, so what do I do with my kids? So you take him. And we said, okay, we take him, but we take him virtual online. And guess what? That has given us another venture that I think is very exciting if I can share later on. So
Very good.
Not the time to stop, okay? When economies turn down, startups should turn up. And so we always tell them, be gritty, be agile. This is the moment. So far, so good. It works. I would say 90% of our startups are doing very well. We still have 10% who will just holding on because it's just not possible to do anything now. So that's my story.
Excellent. Very good. And it's very important that you as invest, not only just you as investors support your portfolio companies, but it's very interesting how you've brought them all together to support each other. And I think we've got to remember that a lot of the unicorns that we've seen over the past few years did start during a recession. So they did start when markets were very bad. So we do have to keep that in mind as well. Thank you very much for that. Viviana, if you can share your experience with us, please.
Yes, of course. Well, first, I wanted to really understand the personal realities of the entrepreneurs that are within my portfolio. So basically, I organized an online meetup with each one to see if they had a family, if they had a member of their family with coronavirus or not, or if they had someone that could be prone to be more protected. I wanted to understand their personal standings first. Then I reached out to because this is a great opportunity. Now these digital connections can give us a great opportunity of creating new partnerships with people from around the world. So I basically reached out to those mentors that I had and to others that have been working very close with the accelerator, because the accelerator it was based as a collaboration model. So I have experts from 6 countries come to Bolivia last year to develop the methodology that we put in place here. So I reached out to them and basically have them mentor the startups that we have in our portfolio so they can make better decisions in the current times. I'm fully committed to understand what each company in my portfolio are going through and trying to help them move to a less critical phase, not with investment at this point, but with advice and regional mentoring, like I mentioned. And I think collaboration is key. Collaboration between entrepreneurs, collaboration between investors from around the world, having that support on one click has really made a difference for me and for them to take the better decisions in this hard time.
Very good. And I think it's quite important what you just said there around looking at entrepreneurs' personal circumstances as well, not just focusing on the company and what's happening with the company, but personally what's going on. And like Roger said, for a lot of entrepreneurs today, this is the first time they're having to face a crisis. So it's not just dealing with it from a professional perspective, but from a personal perspective as well, especially considering this is affecting people's health, and a lot of people have someone close to them who's been affected by it. Thank you very much for that. Tina, how have things changed for you since the pandemic has started?
Well, I share what you've all shared, and particularly Vivian, is I find that I've been more in a mentoring space, like the emotional side, how are you, like you being, how's your family, and really understanding, are there any challenges, any issues, anybody who's been affected that could potentially distract you, if you will, or cause you to panic. Because remember, when people can cope better when there is certainty, no matter how far away it is. But in this situation, there's no certainty anywhere, right? Even governments are not certain. That nobody knows how we're going to come out of the lockdown or what it would look like. So I found that I've stepped more into the personal mentorship space, and their mental well-being, is being more at the forefront. Also, we've had to review the business modules in terms of, looking at the next 90 days, and then the next 180 days from there, could we still utilize the same business module as we're using this 3 months? Would it still be standing in 6 months' time? Would it stand in 9 months? So stress testing all the changes that we're putting in, not even, I mean, we normally say short term, like 12 months. Now short term is like, 4 weeks, 3 weeks, weekly by weekly, because everything's been changing so fast. So it's really stress testing the new implementation. And we have a Facebook Live here, and one of the practitioners, she's a podiatrist, and she's actually telling me right now that she's moved her whole, I mean, podiatry is, one-on-one. You can't treat a patient being 2 meters away, right? It's impossible. But she's saying that she's moved her business to telehealth, and she's now seeing patients via video consultation. And so she's like, wow, I'm seeing patients who've never been to my clinic before, right? And so it's identifying what technology is out there, and can I leverage that in this moment, even if it's a really short space, like the 90 days, then go for it. Because what you want to do, what I'm advising them is, you want to keep the momentum with your patients. You want to keep communicating with them, and be honest as well, to say, look, I'm not sure when we're going to be back, but these are the new changes and systems we're putting in place. And also, whenever there is change, even when it's not forced, if you will, there's always resistance. So you have to address those resistance to change as well. So she's telling her patient, there is no software, you don't have to download anything. You just have to have a smartphone or tablet, and you just book it. It will send you a link. Just click the link at the time. I will be there. I will see you. Nothing. So again, it's understanding what is available and how can it solve that problem. But the key thing is always communicate and almost like think ahead. What potential pushback will I get from my clients, and how can I address that for them from the very beginning? I've also realized more and more what I'm doing for my startups and clients is that really reviewing the routes to market and access to market. So the mental well-being, it was the key thing. What opportunities, or what are our options? What does that look like? How is that going to impact from a cost perspective? Because don't forget that now you want to preserve, let's hope, with the banking system, then now is the time to preserve your cash, right? So you want to, before you spend, realize how is this going to have an effect on the business from a cash perspective. Is it affordable? Is it really, really essential? And is it affordable? Once those boxes have been ticked, is this the right route and access to our market, for example? And if it is, then you're on to a winner. Could you potentially collaborate with other entrepreneurs or startups in maybe different locations, but it's similar industries? So if you're an accelerator or incubator, could you collaborate, for example? And then I think it was Roger, you talked about like being totally transparent and looking at really tightening the cash flow, really tightening the cash flow, bringing the runway even further forward, because there is so much volatility in every economy. So you have to be super, super tight on that. And every single spending needs to be like essential, needs to be crucial, if you will. When it comes to the staff, they had to, again, share with them transparently, look, this is where we're at, this is what it is. We can maybe defer a payment, or we can do a little cut, or, provide various options that are fair. Is how I've been advising them. It's not just fair to the business or the startup, but fair to the people you're working with, because, how you're treating your team very much so have a big impact on whether you'd have a business to come back to, right? Because when the gates are open and everybody's rushing out, you need your team beside you. So how you treat them now is so much more crucial. So put all the cards on the table and then let them choose what is fair for them, because they're also living lives. they're also facing similar situations in their own personal lives. And so it's really important that all those are thought through as well. And then always, I'm telling them, you know, checking. If you have any thoughts or any, you know, haha moments, don't dismiss them. Just bring them to the table, let's review it, let's, you know, stress test it and check. Because like Roger, you're talking about, yes, economies are down, but, you know, if we look at Uber and all the Zoom, all of those were born, you know, out of a previous recession, right? So there is a lot of, I mean, startups, entrepreneurs, we do that a lot. We always are thinking, in, you know, our mind is creating. So you could spot a gap in the market somewhere. Right? I've spotted a gap in the market. Parents who hate homeschooling because we don't understand these, you know, algebra and things like that. How can we still not let our kids get so rusty, right? So I've spotted a gap in the market. I'm like, I need a startup to create a solution for this because I hate it and I'll do anything for somebody to take that off my plate. Because my kids' school are not providing online tuition, they're sending lessons, and we're supposed to deal with it ourselves. So again, it's encouraging that the no idea is a stupid idea. Always bring it to the table, but be honest about it. If you're afraid, if you feel that from a personal perspective, your mental health is being impacted, then immediately you need to, you know, check in and let us help. So it's not time to put your head in the sand. It's now time more so to just get every support that you can and rally everybody in, including the team.
And I think it's about thinking outside of the box to ensure business continuity, and it's getting everyone involved in order to do that. Thank you for that, Tina. I've had people reach out to me and ask me, is it a good time to buy stocks, obviously working for a stock exchange, and what they should be investing in, because the stock markets have dropped globally. But it's not doom and gloom for everyone. There are certain sectors that continue to perform well, others that have benefited from the current situation and seen accelerated growth. Everyone talks about healthcare and tech companies such as Zoom that provide online conferencing facilities. We've seen Amazon's share price reach highs over the past couple of weeks. Have you come across any companies or specific solutions that have really benefited from the pandemic? And who is it at the biggest loss due to the lockdowns around the world? Let's stay with you, Tina. You're the co-founder of an award-winning healthcare organization, Undefeated. Is healthcare the flavor of the month? Or is there other things that you've been looking at? You know, you just spoke about homeschooling.
I'm thinking that really, I mean, there's various industries that, you know, we probably in the past haven't really given so much weight to, if you will, like our retail, you know, our food industry, right? Now, I think globally, there could potentially, subject to how long this goes on, there could be food insecurities, right? Because like if we just take Europe, and UK and, you know, Spain and France and Germany and the Netherlands, all our borders are closed, right? So there is fruits and vegetables that are not being harvested, can't be harvested. Of course, there's adaptations such as there is information coming through here on the Facebook in terms of using robotics to do the harvesting and all of those things. Yes, it has its place, but because we haven't been running, for example, that industry at that scale with, you know, robotics, it has its place, but still it would not be able to meet the capacity because don't forget, we're all at home. We're all eating more, right? And so the demand has increased more so than, you know, 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, or 6 weeks ago, or even, you know, 2 months ago. So yes, definitely health industry is one of the industries that is booming because everybody I'm finding is now looking towards living more healthily, making more health choices. I think there was reports about somewhere in India for the first time they can see, you know, the Himalayas, it's cleared up, and we know in China as well, you know, so we know. And for some reason, everybody is like, wow, you know, we're saving the earth. For the first time, we have to just sit at home, watch TV, eat, homeschool our kids, and we're going to save the world, right? We're going to live longer, you know. So from that perspective, everybody's become more conscious about the choices they're making, like how they're shopping, what they're shopping, how much they're shopping, what they're eating, right? And so, yes, I feel that out of this, even industries such as like personal fitness, where it had predominantly been in person more so. Yes, there's fitness DVDs and things like that, but how many people really were utilizing that? I think the scales were more would opt for the gym with a personal trainer in person or in a class, more so than online class, but they're moving online. So even that area is moving. For the ladies, our hair is like, like we're dying to have our hairs done, our eyebrows, our nails, but it's not possible to do your, for a hairdresser to do your hair. So I'm very, very positive that there would be new, businesses that would, help solve those problems. We also know that, for example, those with chronic diseases, such as like diabetes, obviously cardiovascular, and because of the high risk, they are not able to, maybe access the normal everyday GP service and things like that. So again, in that space, as far as like health, we would begin to see more focused, specific, technology and maybe applications that would be developed that can help better manage, in that group. I also actually wrote a white paper back in 2018, can you believe it? Talking about 2019-2020 on education. And the fact that, no longer would employment be dependable on academic excellence, but like gaming in educational sphere is in the past has been seen like, oh my gosh, you let your kids play games, you're a bad mom kind of thing. But that's now, what are we all doing, right? And we're also realizing that academic excellence is no more, but core requirements for employability is now becoming more towards the traditional, like creative skills, soft skills, confidence, demonstrating teamwork. How quickly can you think? How quickly can you adapt? How quickly can, how nimble are you? Because that's what we're all doing, right? From the home to being entrepreneurs, to being startups, to being government, we're all having to demonstrate those skills even more so than ever. And then, of course, you don't create individuals who can think and are strong leaders and, all those merely in the classroom. My leadership skills, I don't think, even my qualification in the university prepared me for that. And so we're going to see a lot of that change, and possibly more parents opting to homeschool their kids and utilizing more technology than ever, again, in education. So, yeah.
Good. Thank you for that, Tina. Joel, I know you said earlier that there's some deals that you've been turning away, but what is it that you're keeping an eye on, and what is it that you're staying away from a sector perspective?
All right. Yes, what I mentioned already, there are certain sectors which we are stepping away a little bit just to see how it goes. Obviously, the automotive industry suppliers and startups which can tap into that market. I think we are a little bit cautious with that, but it's very hard to say, because we never turn those down. We just say that, okay, we have something more important companies to look up at this present moment, more urgent ones. So we are just rather rescheduling these type of companies. But obviously the hotel tourism industry, restaurants, entertainment, so these are a little bit rescheduled to a later stage. But everything which is what for example Tina said, online education, that's a top priority. We are looking at 2 companies right now. Also everything which is relating remote working, contactless working. any kind of technical devices solutions that we are currently speeding up. MedTech, especially related to infections and other inventions. For example, we are looking at a company which is, I always truly enjoy in an entrepreneur who is capable to adapt to situations very quickly. And these guys were looking at the development of 3D microscopes so far, but now they looked into this opportunity, and also kind of as a you know, altruistic way that, okay, now we stop the current development and we try to develop a breathing machine as quickly as possible. And now they are in the I think 95% ready. So okay. I truly enjoy that type of entrepreneurship, and that's a good sign of pivoting capability to pivot your ideas and to adapt to a changed environment. Certain companies in the portfolio dramatically dropped revenues. Obviously, everybody who is related to, for example, Airbnb and that sort of thing, they have now zero revenue. So they need to drastically cut the burn rate, delay every investment, cut the cost, cut the salaries, go back to absolute minimum to survive. Some of them, another portfolio company who is organizing video consultancy possibility for doctors, that's now, you know, flourishing, and they don't have the capacity to cope with. So there are opportunities, there are threats. We are there to help them, and also in the new companies, we, as I said, we don't drop them. We just reschedule the timing of looking into them.
Okay, good. And yeah, I think tourism has been one of the sectors that has really been affected by this, but it's one of those sectors which, you know, a lot of the companies, they're not going to disappear. It's just, like you said, a matter of cutting your cost, just trying to survive with the bare minimum. And once things open up, tourism will be back. Of course, it's going to take time, but we do expect it to be back. So it's quite important for companies to really cut their costs and try to survive where incomes have you know, are practically zero today. So good. Viviana, what are your thoughts on the sectors?
Well, there are two clear groups of startups and the effect on the COVID they had on them. Those whose businesses have stopped, and another that tripled revenues. The difference between one and the other, as you know, the delivery or turnaround through online platforms and services. And today, the only way to provide families and maintain certain operational services that do not require contact is through these innovative solutions that might be created during this time as new opportunities. So as the previous panelist said, we're looking at these new solutions. I participated yesterday in the Startup Week in Bolivia, and there was this startup that is developing a platform where teachers from Bolivia and from around the world can work together on content and help each other understand technology to give classes online. And like Tina said, if it's so hard for us parents to want to move into homeschooling, can you understand how hard it is for teachers to use this tool when they're so used to working very close and watching their students? So I think we should be in the lookout for those kind of innovations that can come from around the world. So definitely having an eye open to those possibilities. I believe this will be that those startups that are already offering solutions, for example, for delivery of food and etc., they will be sustained during this time. they're seeing revenue streams quadrupled, and some of my portfolio companies have are generating 6 times more revenue than they were doing a month ago. So I believe, but I don't know if that's going to be sustainable for a long time. And my advice is to start planning strategically what they're going to do with that runway that they already have. And for the first group who are at the verge of just dying, I would say that it's time for a very deep reflection of the model. They will have to evaluate the technology compatibility for those that were born in a very traditional industry, and also question the team makeup and see if they have the quality of people that can take them through this phase. They will also have to reduce anything that is not critical and keep expenses to a minimum. Definitely in Bolivian market, we see that the winners, if we can put winners, are the medical items, food delivery, both for human and pets. New innovative solutions are coming through, and the most affected areas: tourism, restaurants, and construction.
Very good. Thank you for that, Viviana. Roger, you've already spoken about edutech. I know you very much focus on tech businesses as an investor. Are there any other sort of sectors which you think are going to flourish? And, you know, could you share any potential sectors which you think you should be staying away from right now?
Well, let's talk about the stay away then. What is going to flourish during COVID and after COVID? The thing to stay away, as far as we're concerned, is what we call sharing economy. These are businesses that rely on people sharing things together on volume, where under the social distancing measures will continue. So we call them real estate, tourism, transportation, recreation, fitness, fashion, furnishings. This will take 3 years to revive to where they were before COVID.
Okay.
So where's the game? The game is, after we sat down, we have what we call a 60-hour CEO challenge. So I asked all my founders, tell me, using AI, IoT, and robotics, where are we gonna make a difference, and where can we create new businesses? So let's start. Express service, elderly care, social e-commerce, IoT, AI systems, and digital education.
Okay.
Okay, so let's start about express service. So far, everything is focused on the delivery side: grocery, food, medicine. We feel that one area where IoT and AI will be very helpful is what we call urban farming. There's a lot of buildings in most places, and on the top of that building is one area where if you can convert it into a simple, low-cost, self-contained urban farming with IoT that measures the climate, the water, and so on. This can sustain one community by itself. So we're looking at that, very exciting. On elderly care, we know there's a lot of telemedicine, mobile medicine. We're looking at individual health diagnostic, a wearable that we have seen now is possible, where you can measure all your vitals. Yeah. And it's connected to the doctor and the HMOs, and you don't need to even be reminded that you're up for a consultation, because the doctor can call you. So those are really cutting edge, but simple. On social e-commerce, we found out the importance of what we call influencer marketing, where we, like Rina has this gourmet chocolate that is very much based on a nice cafe in a nice mall. And then when they realize that millennials are bored with this, COVID, and they want something new, Rina just came up with the idea of using influencer to, open up a box, learn how to make chocolates, and because there are artisanal chocolates, so they could see it vividly. And then she didn't even expect it. After 3 days, people are buying chocolates not for themselves, but to give to their friends.
Give to it.
Okay?
Very
So it
good.
became a, FOMO, the fear of missing out. So
Yeah.
in 60 days or 60 hours, their sales went up by 145. So we now refitted, and that we found out chocolate shouldn't be a brick and mortar, but actually online using influencer. There are many things you can think of with that example. AI, IoT, I think we have a lot of things that we can think in terms of delivering those things I mentioned, the wearable, the urban farming. And so, and then we also talk about robotics in hospitals. It's amazing, but with one reality most people probably realize is that many of the deaths are frontliners who actually sacrifice themselves. So we said, if we have our humanoid robotics doing the things that they shouldn't be doing, like dispensing medicine, distributing food, doing the vitals, doing thermal scanning, doing counting of how many are in the room, we can all measure that. So we have a system that does that. We're now using that to monitor the quarantine measures in the government. We gave it to the government so they can now know every piece of land or area, how many people are there, whether they are not following the social distancing. Finally, my favorite, of course, is digital education. So in 60 days, we converted our 20 teachers to become virtual teachers. And we learned something we never knew before. There's a difference between homeschooling, online education, digital education, and virtual education.
Okay.
People talk about it. The reason why they don't like online learning is because it ended up the parents doing the work of the teacher. Because the teachers also didn't know how to use the power of the virtual. So now we have a new system, again, driven by AI at the back end. We have our own platform. We can know the preferences and the learning pattern of a child, and we can recommend to them 3 types of courses. We call life skills, future ready skills, and then what we call out of school skill. So they can learn to be one day become entrepreneurs, which is what our goal. Number 1. Number 2, they still learn literacy, numeracy, science, technology, but for the purpose of innovating and creating something. Okay, so it's still crafted play. So this is something we're very interested in. Those who are looking into that, I'm very happy to tie up with anybody. We're probably ahead of the curve now, and we're ready to launch our platform. And there's one that Rina and I are looking at, esports. Esports as education cafe. Okay, heretofore, esports cafes are seen as recreation areas. We are now talking to the biggest esports in the country. We're converting all these esports into educational hub.
Excellent.
Because it will train gamers who are already oriented to future skills. To learn more of the skills that we need, because my prediction in the next 3 years, we will need a lot of project development, web designer. We're going to have a dearth of it. So we don't have that system that feeds the pipeline. So those are our bets today. And actually, we're so busy now. I've been worried, like COVID has made us just work harder.
I think everyone is working a lot more, working from home. So it's good. It's good. Hopefully it'll help the economy. Excellent. Thank you very much, Roger. We have about 15 minutes remaining. I know we have a section for questions from the audience. If I can request any questions to be sent through the chat, please do it now. We have one question from Ingrid. The question is, what are the plans for long-term sustainability after we assist with building new ecosystems? If anyone wants to take that question, I'll repeat that. What are the plans for long-term sustainability after we assist with building new ecosystems? Any takers?
I've been busy talking and then realize I'm on mute. I think, first of all, we're going to have to, recognize that there is still uncertainty on the road. And so it's still going to take, I believe that like collaboration and co-creation would be one of the pillars for, sustaining the new systems, if you will, the new ecosystems or protocols, frameworks, whatever you want to call them. Collaboration and co-creation would be very, very crucial. Secondly, innovation. Of course, some entrepreneurs, SME startups may well be in the phase of, okay, let's just get past this place. Let's continue to serve our existing clients, or let's pivot in this way so we don't completely collapse. But we're going to have to look at like really, maybe 10 years or 20 years, but chopping it down again into such a way that, look, if a wave of some sort like this, so businesses actually, if it will have to have like COVID-19 as a line item on their P&Ls, and I did a teaching on it, you have to have, COVID-19 as a line item on your P&L. Time that you're spending to deal with team, to communicate with your clients, all of those that you can't even measure has to be captured and incorporated into the P&L. We're going to have to leverage technology for a long time. And I'm thinking even more so across Africa, where some of the technology that we have been adopting has been seen as a negative, if you will, that it's going to create unemployment, it's going to create economic downturn, and all of those will all need to change. So our governments, and if we're looking at Africa, would need to begin to look at technology in a whole different light, and leverage technology for two things: for acceleration in terms of how we reach customers, how we do business, how we deliver, how we even manufacture, if you will, and also for looking at outcome-driven innovation. So I talked about innovation, leveraging technology for outcome-driven innovation. So not just innovating for the sake of it, but there should be really clear-cut outcomes in every single thing that we do. And also we need to start thinking from the top, right? We need to start thinking from the top, where businesses need to make, like, your well-being of your team needs to begin to be a priority. Open, honest, transparent communication with your team needs to begin to, start at the top, because you always want your team to support you. And if they don't feel trusted, like, we're all working from home, right? You have to trust your team. You have to trust your staff that they're going to do it. They're all going to be working, but also don't forget managing their family and all of those. So from a sustainability perspective, look at the short term, we had to give them work remotely and trust them that they were going to do it, and gave the flexibility that, the deadlines were not the same as when we were in the office space. So moving in terms of sustaining it, we need to start thinking at the top, how can we give more trust, more responsibility, delegate more to our team, but make them feel supported and enabled to be able to do those. And it's to sustain it, we need to be ready and willing to take risks. We need to be ready and willing to step out and to look at what are the other alternatives, what other options do we have? Are these essential? Are these crucial? Could we do away without it? Right? And if we can do away without it, what is the suitable alternative that can be utilized in going forward? So those are just, a few, I'll let others as well share as well, but from my perspective, those would be crucial for sustaining, the future once we put in new ecosystems and new frameworks in place.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that, Tina. I've got Ellie, who's asking for contact information. Ellie, please do connect to everyone on LinkedIn. We are all on LinkedIn, so you can search for us on there. And please do reach out to Roger directly. It seems like Ellie wants to know more about the different kinds of education and virtual education. I think because we're a little bit short on time, please do reach out to Roger through LinkedIn directly and connect with him. I think one question, that there's a lot that we haven't discussed. I think there were far too many questions I wanted to put forward to the panelists, and I think the answers have been absolutely fantastic, so we haven't been able to go through them. But before the last of comments from each panelist, there's one question which is close to my heart, working for a stock exchange here in Dubai. So for us at Nasdaq Dubai and other stock exchanges around the world, I want to direct this question to Zsolt, considering you've been working for a stock exchange yourself, and you highlighted the gap between venture capitalists and doing an IPO, and there just isn't enough private equity money out there. Do you think post the pandemic we can we'll see a lot more companies looking at going and doing an IPO a lot earlier than they may have thought of doing? And this could be because there'll be a lot of companies out there looking for funding. VCs, private equity firms will be a lot more demanding. They'll be pushing valuations a lot more favorable to themselves. And it's going to push companies to start considering doing an IPO much earlier than they would have thought had the pandemic not happened. What are your thoughts on that?
That's an interesting point. We will see definitely an increased number of companies which they definitely have to tap that market place, because they will have no other choice. The number of those companies in Hungary, it's currently manageable, so the current ecosystem can handle it even without the private equity side, and the stock exchange is capable to absorb those companies. Generally, I think the responsibility of the VC sector right now is not only just monitoring the current situation and analyzing how the revenues are shrinking and what kind of measures should be taken to keep the runway longer, but also to prepare for the recovery period and also beyond. And that relates to your question. So we have already started to analyze what kind of specific recovery pattern will be applicable for each and every portfolio companies, whether it will be a V shape, so there will be a big jump, whether there will be a U shape because maybe the supply chain situation is much more complex and will take more time, or any other type of situations we are testing, and we are preparing ourselves as well as for fundraising or new funds as well, which we plan to launch in the coming months or years, to take these into consideration and help these companies in this recovery and re-establishment period. In general, I think the stock exchange role will also be even more important. I have always been a stock exchange supportive guy, not because I used to work there, but I do believe that in the full financing ladder, and there is in the past couple of years more and more companies did private fundraisings and avoided the stock exchange, which was a kind of natural way of raising money and you know, not taking the burden of the harsh reporting requirements of the stock exchange regulations. But now I think everything will change, and we have to reconsider this new situation, and the whole ecosystem, including the stock exchange, should work it out together.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you very much. So look, to finish off, if I can please ask each of the panelists to share some final comments as a takeaway for audience. If you can please limit it to 1 minute because we are very short of time. Tina, if I can start with you, please.
Yes, it comes down to communication, trust your team, because there's no business with no team. So key thing is keep open communication with your team. If you don't have a mentor, this is the best time to have a mentor, because not only will you have support from a business perspective, but you need a sounding board. You need a solid sounding board. So if you don't have a mentor, this is the best time to find a proper qualified mentor who has been there and got the t-shirt to prove it.
Are you selling your services there, Tina?
No, I mean, WBAF, we do have a business school, but you know, for me personally, in my own life, even with this homeschooling thing, my mentors have been like a lifesaver for me, absolute lifesaver for me from a personal perspective, as a mom, first of all, as a wife. I mean, my husband is still living, you know, I've not done anything to him yet. That's a testimony in itself. So, you know, my mentors have been a lifesaver for me in these weeks. So,
and the WBAF has a mentor program, so it's important that startups do.
And also, yes, you know, we're entrepreneurs. You always have to sell. So, yes, you know, come and find all of us.
Very good. Viviana.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with Tina 100%. A mentor that you can reach out to, both for personal issues like homeschooling and for professional challenges as well. And in Bolivia, we don't have as many mentors that have walked the path. So I would totally recommend peer-to-peer mentoring as well between entrepreneurs. And here in Bolivia, that there is such a network. So reach out to other entrepreneurs. For us, key players in the ecosystem, try to balance the human side of things right now. Like, don't do hundreds of webinars. Do some meetups where people can open up and tell you what they're going through. We know we're talking a lot about a digital world, but that digital world will come with another perspective of humanity, of environment, of loving your time. So keep that in mind as well. And for everybody, both entrepreneurs, investors, mentors, great opportunity to think beyond boundaries. Reach out to international networks. Like Roger, I'm gonna be emailing you right away. Tina, your leadership, me as a woman and a mother, and also doing a home marriage and everything else. Now I have Tina to reach out to, and let's see what her experience can bring out in me to help my community.
Very
so
good.
That would be it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Viviana. Jolt, last words from you, please.
Yes, I fully agree what the ladies said. Definitely, my good advice to these companies to communicate with the funds as early as possible. I already mentioned that we are there to help. We are teamed up together for long term, so we do whatever we can. I'm pretty optimistic, especially at the early stage companies, what WBAF is also focusing on. If we look at the time around the Lehman Brothers crisis, we have some statistics that I think it's only the VC investments in the early stage companies only dropped around 25%. So it's not significant. And actually, the very early ones, like the angel type of investments, actually increased over that time. So definitely in these times, good ideas, good inventions, very well received, and we and I think the other funds as well are looking at those opportunities with good care and agilely. So I do encourage everybody to go to these funds and ask for money. It's an opportunistic approach, I know, but I think this is the right time for these early stage companies.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And Roger?
My 1 minute sharing is summarized as the dual role of an angel investor. In good times, act like an investor. In tough times, act like an angel. In normal times, take more risk. In difficult times, show more grit. Pivot, don't panic, reinvent, not retreat. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Excellent. Some wise words to end the session with. One of the great things about WBAF is the global network of investors that bring vast knowledge and experience for each of us to learn from. It's a family I'm proud to be part of, because I know for any challenge I may face, there will be more than one person in the WBAF network that is ready to help me. Whether you're an entrepreneur or an investor, we know you're probably going through some sort of challenges right now. Please do feel free to reach out to the WBAF network. I'd like to thank Baybus, Christina, Mariam, and the rest of the team for organizing this webinar. And a big thank you to our panelists, Tina, Viviana, Jolt, and Roger. Thank you for your insights and advice. Thank you to everyone for joining us. Stay home and stay safe. Goodbye, everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tahir. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Tahir, for
Thank you,
great
Tahir.
moderator. Thank you.